for dropping by. I'm going to do some work on my Scots pine today, and I'm starting by taking the wire off, which is dead boring but needs to be done. It's cutting in places. Doesn't matter too much on a Scots pine with gnarly bark, but nonetheless there's quite a lot of wire on here, and I want it all off because I want to see what branches have set and what haven't. Now I'm hoping that a lot of it I can just unwind without cutting, so I might be able to save some of the pieces, but I suspect some of the branches will just boing back into their original position, especially the smaller ones, in which case we'll have another go at wiring, possibly later in the year. It's not my favourite chore, in fact I hate it. It's something I really do not enjoy doing. But nonetheless, you know, it's to a degree it's part of the bonsai world. You know, you just have to do it if you want to create pads and things like you do on conifers. So that's just something we do. Some people love doing it. It's therapeutic to some people. To me it's an evil necessity that I can do without, I must admit. But there is a lot of wire on here. I did it over several days. I'm not very good at it, which is possibly why I don't enjoy it, but you know, we do what we can. Yeah, some of this is just going to get cut on the grounds that it will take too long to unwind, and we'll see what we can do. What I'm hoping to do is, because the pads have expanded quite a bit, get quite a bit of back budding, and as a consequence of the shaping I got some quite nice pads out of this. I'm hoping that there's enough foliage that where we've got little twigs and branches that don't fall in line, shall we say, and break the outline of the tree, they can just be taken off or reduced back perhaps with the thought of some back budding. I mean, Scots pine back bud readily, very good at it in fact, and it's relatively reliable. If you've got a strong healthy plant you could almost guarantee it, but you need that state of play to get the guarantee, if you see what I mean. Otherwise it's just some of this wire is how on earth did I get that up in there? But you do need to go careful taking wire off, because if you have managed to get some back budding, certainly on the thinner branches, that wire was really cut in. Then taking the wire off can often knock those back buds off, so you need to look at what you're doing, not just do it blindly, if you know what I mean. Take care and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm going to do some cutting here. Whoops. Well, it had black handles, it looked like the right one. How are we doing? I'm not doing this methodically, basically. I'm just grabbing all the bits as I come across them and undoing them. Once I've done this, I might only do half the tree. I go along the grounds that if you start to get bored with a task that has possible dangers to your tree if not done, you know, properly, it's better to stop. So I might only do half the tree today and leave it at that, and then perhaps come back tomorrow and do a bit more, rather than keep going after I've got to that fed up point and start rushing and you know, messing things up basically. So we may only get so far today. So I was just laughing, I've got a really thick piece of wire here on a very, very thin branch, and it's because it was the bit that was left. So it probably meant I cut it a bit too long. And then I thought, oh well, actually we can do that branch with that, but it's far too thick for the branch it was wiring. Right, so is that a whole branch? Yes, that's a whole branch. The other thing I will do once I've got the wire off is we will fluff them. We will go over all of these tips and what I call fluff them, and that will get the dead needles off. Yeah? Which means we can see what we're doing. Anyway, back down to this one. So the whole tree wasn't wired. I did as much as I could bear to do, I think is the expression, and then I stopped. And there were a few little twigs and a few little bits and pieces that didn't actually get wired, and consequently there were a few branches that were tucked under other branches with wire on to hold them in place, if you see what I mean, rather than actually wiring them. So they were still held like being wired, but without any wire at all, just being held in position by the fact there was something else close by that did have wire on. Looks like I've got a dead branch there. Well, if it's the only one in the whole tree, I think I'll live with that. Right, so that's another one done. This is a very weak branch here. It's actually an extension of the branch above it, and it's never grown well, quite honestly, and already I can see that it's bounced back and it's lost all its pad shape completely, whereas the one above has held on. Let's get it back round this way. You can see this has still retained its shape. This not so much, but it's got some really spindly bits on it. It's not a very good pad at all, not really very good at all. Nonetheless, it's what we've got. Right, so that's those two done. I think I'll come over here now. There is a problem I've got, is that my height, I am rather a short person. What do you mean you notice? As a consequence, this tree on this bench is actually a little tall for me. So getting the wire off these top branches might prove a little difficult. But we'll plod away at it. So far the wire's unwinding okay. And I'm working in areas where there's unlikely to be any back budding, quite honestly. Too far back down the branches, if you know what I mean. Although even that's possible. There's an example where there's a tiny little growth right next to a piece of wire. So we unwind the wire carefully so that it doesn't knock it. And if in doubt, cut it so that you're not unwinding it anymore. You know, in other words, you start with another end, like I'm just going to do here. Just go and then carry on. So you've got a much shorter piece to unwind then. Goodness knows where this wire's off to. Oh, I see. Yeah. We will have to cut that one, or we will have to undo this big thick piece. These are the pieces that I hope have worked, is where this really thick wire is. It was obviously bending a large branch into position. All the other little branches come off of that. So if that's not in the right place, the little branches can't be, can they? So I'm hoping this has done its job. I don't normally have wire this thick. Well, this great big thick wire on these thick branches here, this is the main sort of shape of this pad, it's these two big branches, hasn't cut in. And I want to try and keep it intact because, as I said, I don't have this wire very often, so I want this to stay as a whole piece. I don't want to cut it, and then it can be straightened out and possibly used again. A piece like that, you know, it's it can be straightened out, pliers on the bends if necessary, and can go to one side for reuse. Yeah, so we don't waste pieces like that, or I don't. You know, it's. We live in a throwaway society apparently, and it's much better if we didn't. We try and reuse stuff. Get as much use out of things as possible, and not just dump them. Imagine if we did that with people. Oh, getting a bit old, a bit broken. Now I think we just dump that one. Get a new one. I can't believe how much wire I put on this tree. I must admit I don't remember doing it, but I obviously did. Here is the wire. Still, it's coming off, slowly but surely. It's the top I'm dreading doing, although there are parts of the top I didn't actually wire, so, you know, although there looks like a lot of tree left to look at, there might not necessarily be a lot of wire on it. This pad's nearly done now. Too much left to do. Oh, this bit's cut in. This bit's cut in quite bad. It's funny how it varies. But it's where it went tight round a fork, and the growth on both sides of that fork has been quite extensive. So the fork has actually swollen up quite a bit. So, but it's in behind the foliage, so it's, you know, it's no big deal. And as I said, it's with the pine under normal circumstances, you're going to end up with some quite. Oh, that really has gone in there. Is that the lot on that pad? Yes. No, just this bit. Just a bit. And then once we've got the wire off the whole pad, we can fluff it up, get the old needles to drop, and see what stays in shape and what doesn't. And then what doesn't stay in shape, if it's superfluous, we can cut it off to get the shape back. And if it's required, then maybe later in the year we put some more wire on and rewire the bits that didn't stay where they were put, which is always a nuisance having to do that. It's bad enough having to do it once, let alone having to do it again. But that's how it goes sometimes, you know. I mean, you can leave wire on a pine for 2 years and take it off and the branches still spring back. And unless you wire very loose, that's a nice one. We have blood. That's probably from the jagged end of a piece of wire. It's not going to be from the tree itself, that's for sure. Probably my hand just brushed over the end of one of the pieces of wire. I'll live. Industrial injury. I didn't even feel that happen, I must admit. It can't be that deep, it's not leaking all over the place. Right, so then we fluff it up, get rid of all these dead needles. They just fall off. Now, strictly speaking, I'm doing this in a daft order because getting the old needles off the bottom branches followed by getting the old needles off of the top branches means they will get caught up in the bottom branches and we'll have to do the bottom branches again. But why I'm doing it is not just to make it look pretty, it's because I want to see the foliage I've got left, and I can't see that clearly with all the old needles in the way. It's not gone mad, it hasn't dropped needles all over the place. See, now that pad has opened up quite a bit. It's got lots of long springy little pieces as part of its makeup. So, you know, it's things like this. But that branch could be just brought up inside the other branches and held in place by the other branches. Just sort of plonk it like that. You know, sometimes you can get away with just tucking a branch behind another branch. No wire at all. But that is a bit spaced out now. Probably have to be rewired. So we've done two over here and one over here. I'll just lay out the plans for this tree because I'm not going to film anymore. I'll carry on without filming. I'll cut the filming off because this is just tedious watching me do this, I'm sure. So the idea is that once I've actually done this and I've taken all the wire off and got all the old needles off and everything, any branches that can be cut off will be. This is a prime contender over here. I may take that right off back to there. Because it doesn't want to take part in this pad. Basically, it's springing off into the wilderness, and half of it's dead anyway. It's got one tiny little bit of green, so you know. In fact, we'll take it off now. Why just talk about it when you can actually do it? So we'll come back round here and take that off. That'll put a curve into that branch as well by taking that off at that joint. Better. But yes, the plans are then, I've got a Dremel which I've never used but I will do, and the idea is to clean up the sherry down through here and open it up a bit. It stops a bit abruptly. Is that a bit on camera? Yes it is. It stops very abruptly, and what's happening is it's growing over the sherry, the new bark, and whatever the stuff is that's underneath the bark is growing over the shari, which is spreading the bark out, which is making the trunk wider here than it is down here. So what I'm hoping to do is carve this away a bit down here so that the shari goes a bit further down, and hopefully it doesn't look like such an inverse taper. I mean, when you're looking at it head on, because it's got this root growing down here, it doesn't show so much, but there is inverse taper at the very base, and it's because this has pushed out over the years, over quite a few years. But yeah, so I plan on cleaning this up a bit, and then we'll put the lime sulphur on, whiten it up, brighten it up. There's a couple of other little tiny gins sticking out, we'll do those at the same time. This hasn't long been repotted, so it certainly doesn't need repotting for a while now. I quite like the pot it's in, this bronzy pot. Seems to go well with the pine itself. And then we'll see how we go. I'm quite pleased with this. The top has thickened up immensely, but in doing so, this year, I stopped the growth. So I actually took the candles off before they extended. So what we will probably get is just one or two buds where those candles were removed. So we won't have a mass of buds for next year, But what I think I will have to do is thin this out and redistribute the energy, because these branches down here, you can see up here, you can see the buds on the end of the growths, and they're quite strong looking. Whereas if you look down here, they're not even there, let alone strong looking. So I think we need to put more energy into these lower branches, and we can only do that by taking it away from the top. So we may have to thin that out quite dramatically, and by taking the tips out in places, not the whole thing, the auxins are gone, and you know, it'll basically start the tree growing in other places with any luck. And we may need to feed quite heavily next year to actually push that energy. So anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. That's basically the goal for today, was to get the wire off, which I will do that. I will finish that. I can do that off camera, so I can work a bit quicker if I'm not rabbiting at the same time. Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. And then we'll have a go with the Dremel for the first time ever, do a bit of carving and do a bit of cleaning up here, possibly widening the shari by taking this growth back a bit, make it a bit more of a feature perhaps, and we'll see where we go from there. Obviously when I get the Dremel out and I do some work, I will film it. I will attempt to do it in here. I've just bought a mini chainsaw, nothing to do with my bonsai, that's for a totally different job in the garden, but it came with some safety goggles. So I will try using the Dremel in here, but if it chucks pieces of woods all over my orchids, then it'll have to be done outside. I'll have to get an extension lead to do it. But I will film that, be quite fun, because I've never used one before, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. But we'll have a go, you know, that's what bonsai's all about. There's a video on YouTube showing you how to do anything you want to do, sometimes many. So I will watch a few other people fannying around with the Dremel to see what they get up to and how they hold it and what sort of tool they've got and what it achieves, and then I'll have a go after I've watched a few other people doing it. Anyway, see you next time. I class this as one of my better trees, I must admit. Some people say it's my best tree. That's debatable, you know. The beauty of a bonsai is in the eye of the beholder. Some people don't like conifers at all, they like deciduous trees. Some are the other way round. What's the point of a tree that dumps out its foliage halfway through the year? You know, and others like both. I like this tree because I nearly lost it through neglect, and it came like this. This was a collected tree, and the damage was done by forestry vehicles driving past it because it was overhanging the edge of the track. So this damage wasn't done by me, it's natural. Including the curves in the trunk and everything. I mean, okay, I've pushed the branches, but you know, and brought this one right down here to get a lower pad and everything. But yeah, the main sort of shape of the tree was as given, as I collected it. That's why I quite like it, because it's natural. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by, and if you're still here, you're very brave, and obviously got nothing better to do. But if you're not subscribed, I'd greatly appreciate it if you did so. I am trying to grow this channel, and if you've watched this far, then you must have been enjoying it, otherwise you'd have bailed out a long time ago. So don't forget to do the old thumbs up, please. Combination of the two, even better. Bye for now.